Hi there, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Cloud-Based Mayhem. We are keeping the X-Alps streak alive here with my good friend Honza Rejmanek, who raced in 5 Red Bull X-Alps starting in 2007 and ending in 2015, which was my first. So we take a walk and a fly down memory lane in this one with Honza. He's now a meteorologist, has a couple kids. He's been doing these really cool tandem bivvies with his elder son. I've had he and his son Martin on the show a little while back. They had another big vol biv adventure in the Alps this summer, which was really cool to watch. They had some good weather and flew the long ways. But yeah, we go back and hear about the highs and lows of his X-Alps exploits, being third in 2009 and all the crazy things that happens in that race. So I think you're really going to enjoy it. Before we get to it, as we dive into December here, I've got a few things of housekeeping, some fun stuff. The first is fear injuries. We're getting ready to launch a Kindle version of my book, Advanced Paragliding. This is one of the chapters in the book, and we want to sample and find out more about fear injuries, how it affects performance, and a bunch of other things. So if you have had one, can you jump on my website and just zip me an email, and we'll reach out and dive into these a little bit more. It's something we want to understand more, because it's a term, I think, that's maybe not very well understood. It's certainly something we've been talking about the last couple of years on the show. I don't know if it came from paragliding or something else, so I'm trying to find out more. The other is, many of you got back to me about this podcast. It was one of our most popular with Hannah Jane Williams. She's a postdoctoral researcher at the Max Planck Institute, and she was studying soaring birds, and had some pretty interesting take on that. But she was not a pilot, and so has been reaching out to pilots and using them to grab data and putting instruments on paragliders to grab data to help them understand more how birds do and why they do what they do. So the podcast was great. It was very educational. I loved it. And Hannah just reached out to me very recently and wanted me to tell all of you that they have a spot for a paragliding-based PhD position that they've just opened up. I'll read you this. The position will investigate all the things we spoke about in the podcast, but with the main question being, how valuable is social information for flight performance and competitive paragliding flight? So she wanted me to share that with all of you. It's going to suit a pilot with an interest in modeling, computational biology, or aerodynamics. So if you think that's something you might be interested in, there's a link in the show notes for this one. Just go to the website and pull up this podcast with Honza, and there's a link there, and you can find out all about it, and you can find out where to reach out to Hannah and see if this would suit you. Sounds really cool. And finally, I'm leaving in a couple days for the super final, but I wanted to let you all know about a very cool mission that Miguel and his team at Alas del Hombre is putting together up in Nayarit right after the super final. So I think the super final wraps the 17th. On the 18th, we're going to get on a plane in Tucumán, which is just outside of Valle, and fly up to Nayarit, it's up by Puerto Vallarta, and fly the mountains there. It looks really cool, and apparently the flying is epic. There's been some cool videos going around on that, and some pretty heavy hitters going up there to fly. So it's a 3-day kind of semi-comp just to explore the area and see if this is something that would work for us for future endeavors down there. So another sister site to Valle where we could do big comps. So they will supply retrieve, I don't know if retrieve, but at least getting up to the launch. And so this isn't a fully organized thing, but it's something if you're down in Valle or you're down in Mexico this December, definitely take a look at that. And I will also have the link for that in the show notes for this one. I'll be posting that on social media and stuff as well. But the area is called Nayarit. Flying looks epic, and Miguel and his team, they put on a good show. It'll be awesome. So it'll be a lot of fun. So if you can make it, come on down and join us. And enjoy the show with Honza. This was a special talk. Hope you like it. Cheers. Honza, great to have you back on the show. We had some technical difficulties. I know tech is not your thing. You're a meteorologist and a pilot. So that was kind of a funny reminder. We're going to be talking about tech in this show, going back to 2007. I remember in the 2015 one, you were still using your little Garmin thing. So, I think you're more a fan of paper maps than all the tech. But good to have you back, bud, and good to see you here. And I'm excited to talk some X-Alps with you, with another one right around the corner.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. And it's going to be, I think, in the last 8 editions, the first one that neither of us are in, huh?
That's right. That's right. Yeah,
we'll both be spectators.
Yeah, we've been there for quite a bit more than a decade if you put the two of us together. Yeah, that's okay. So that's my first question. How hard was it for you to watch your first one and not be in it? So how hard was 2017? Because I'm right around the corner for that one. I'm already starting to get a little bit jumpy about that.
It was not too bad, but thanks to we've had a podcast about this, but basically when I started doing my own little private X-Alps with my son on the tandem with Martin, we were doing our very first one. He was 8, and we were doing our very first one as the 2017 was going on. So we occasionally checked into it, but I actually didn't follow it religiously. I wasn't, at work behind a computer and frantically checking the X-Alps. So
just frothing.
Yeah.
It's actually a good inspiration for me watching you and Martin doing these awesome trips. I mean, I know we're going to get you guys back on for this last one because you guys covered some serious ground. That was amazing. But your first one was when he was 8 and my little one's 5, and she just got her tandem kit from Nate. He's not flying much, so we just got her harness actually yesterday. So I'm prepping, man. I'm going to be following in your footsteps.
Excellent. Yeah, it's an awesome. It's just I can't. It's the one thing I look forward to most every year now is doing these hike and fly self-supported trips with Martin.
Would you ever go back to the X-Alps? Would you do, or has this filled the void?
I think it's momentarily filled the void, but who inspired me tremendously was seeing Ogisawa in his 60s.
I know,
and that just blew my mind. Because I remember he had a disqualification. It might have been 2013, I believe, maybe even 2011, and he had an airspace violation super early on, and he was 50 or just over 50 at that time, and I was like, oh man, that's got to be his last one. He got disqualified on day 2. I think it was 2011. They got really strict for a moment there where they disqualified with no buffer,
no time penalty. You're just out.
And it was super cool to see him back, and it was good to see him kind of still hang in there. He was obviously, wasn't top 10, but he was for a 60-year-old. That's amazing.
Oh, dude! I mean, he and I were going neck and neck, trying not to get eliminated at the end in this last one with my terrible start, and he was making some cool moves, and we had. I haven't communicated verbally very much with Ogie, but he, at the party afterwards, he gave me this look, and I think I gave the one back that was, because the weather in this last one was really sketch, and we gave these look of each other that was just, man, I appreciate you. It was kind of both ways. It was, man, we were fighting back there, and we both hung in there. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah. So it could be something as when when I'm in my early 60s, I might throw in an application and see if they take me. If they do, I'd love to do it again. But
It's
yeah,
pretty fun,
yeah,
as you know. It's well, and we're gonna talk about the fun that you had and maybe some of the not fun that you had. But we've done a few of these now, a couple of them now with Tom and Chrigel, and so you know the theme. We talked about this before we started recording, but we're gonna rewind the clock to actually the first one that I watched as well was 2007. I remember that very vividly. I was up in Scotland sailing and we were trying to get internet wherever we could. And we had clients on board who had no idea what the race was all about. And Bruce and I were just, oh, we sail for an hour. We got to get back to the XL, see what's going on. Watch Honza and Nate. And, but take us back to 2007. You're going to share with us, and you could certainly share more, but share with us a memory that maybe wasn't captured in the race or that, that wasn't in a story or one of the videos, but something that still strikes you now is just a really good moment and maybe a not so good moment. We tend to remember not so good moments as good moments anyway as time goes by. But tell us about 2007. Your
yeah.
first.
2007. Definitely. I'll always start with the worst, but the worst was just the evening before the race. I had a dinner,
That's right.
and after that dinner, I went with a few of the pilots and Dave, my supporter, went, and we just had a dinner. And I remember like walking back and across this bridge, I already got sick and I threw up dinner. And I was like, oh man, there goes 13 euros. I just threw up 13 euros. And that was the least of it, because then that night, I got the runs and I didn't sleep very much, and in the morning it was just both of
Oh,
those
what a
things
way to
continued,
start.
and it was this was the last of the X-Alps where they didn't start out of Salzburg. We actually took a gondola about halfway up the Dachstein, and then there was it was in we were based out of near Hallstatt, and
Yeah.
took the gondola halfway up the Dachstein, and then at about 1,000 meters to hike up. So for most people, that was like an hour and 20 minutes. And I started. There was a little bit of a downhill, hit the bottom of the downhill, and threw up again. And then it was just a crawl because I had like no energy in me. It was, I never know exactly what happened, but I think something I ate the day before, and my most likely culprit is a piece of salami that had floated in the cooler in some melted ice water, and maybe picked up something off the side of the cooler, maybe it was
Oh
something totally
man.
different, but I picked up some pretty bad bug, and I was like, this was terrible. I was basically, you know, as I was hiking up, crawling up to the Dachstein, I was watching these guys fly. I was feeling really strong wind flushing down the Dachstein, the side I was walking up, and I got there. It was too windy, and basically they arranged for the race doctor to come up there, check me out, and that I could spend the night at the Dachstein lift station. Um, and the oddest thing, Gavin, is there's one other guy from Turkey.
So had everyone else already flown
Everybody
off?
flew off. Yeah, I was basically, well, I wasn't quite last because there was this guy from Turkey who wasn't sick, but he got in there on flying merits, but he was terribly out of shape because he he got up there maybe just slightly ahead of me, and it was, by the time he got up there, it was too strong for him to fly. So him and I, we called it the Dachstein prison because it was basically a locker room. We got told we could stay there. I remember the race doctor came and I think gave me a little bit of IV drip just to get me a little bit rehydrated. But yeah, we then in the morning it was locked, so we couldn't get out till I think 6 or 7 in the morning, and then it was blown from the north, so the wrong way. So had to hike down 2,000 meters. So everybody got off that day, and basically had to hike down for 2,000 meters. Then towards the end of the day, saw the race doctor again. But he was saying, I could give you antibiotics, but I have to ask you to quit the race. I said, well, I'm not. no, don't give me antibiotics. I'm not going to quit the race. I'm happy to be in it, and there's a slight chance that I might not be eliminated because there's this Turkish guy who's not moving very much. I kind of passed him that day despite him not being sick. And I think he basically, after 23 kilometers, he gave it up. I mean, I think it's
Just called
we
it.
just called it, yeah. But he might have. I forget exactly whether he called it or whether he stayed in place. I don't know if that was being respected at the time. But kind of long story short on that is slowly, I started getting better. But it was like 4 days before I was feeling myself again. Luckily, on day 3, I managed to have a good flight. It was only 50 kilometers, but it was the longest flight of that whole X-Alps. But it put me 7th from last, which gave me a little bit of a buffer, not by much, but a little bit of a buffer from being eliminated. Because that was back in '07, we could hike all night every night. There was no sleep rule, no rest rule. But it was the first year that the elimination rule was instituted. So
They didn't have that
they didn't
before?
have that before. Yeah, they didn't have that in '03 and
Ah,
'05. So this was the first year that got put in there. But luckily, yeah, I got that third day saved me, and it was one we had to cross the crest of the Alps from the north to the south, and I remember just it was one of those days where you're not getting much above crest level, so you're kind of thrumbled up to a spot where I'm just kind of sloshing against it, and there's just wind kind of sloshing, and finally, in one of those sloshes that you got a little bit of lift, was able to clear the crest and then get into the other valley, and then continue with the flight that down the valley and gotten across the crest, and that was kind of felt like a really miraculous save. So that was really crux is.
what a way to start. Oh, to be so sick after all the preparation and training. And I had to ask you, so I mean, this was just the third one. How big of a deal was it in 2007? Was it still, the biggest thing going in paragliding? Were you just blown away to be in it and be there, or was it still kind of a budding race?
I think he was transitioning to something really big. I mean, I actually didn't get in on the first round, but they kept like 6 sort of wild cards or standbys,
Huh.
and it was Nate got in on the first one, and I was like, okay, well, he'd done the Dolomitan Man or one of those races, so he'd done something else in Aspen, so he'd done a few little things where his name was there. And you know who really got me in there. I mean, obviously Dave Hanning was trying hard to get me in, but he asked Will Gadd to write me a short little
Ah,
thing of support. And in back in the day in Sun Valley, we used to do the Dave Bridges Memorial Race, and I raced Will Gadd up a Baldy, and kind of that Will Gadd at least kind of knew of me a little bit, and he just wrote a really short, like 3 sentence recommendation email that said it'd be fun in a kind of sick way to watch Nate and Honza go at it, just to have two people from the
two Sun
States,
Valley boys.
yeah, and so it was when I got in there, that was super cool to get in there. Then I had this scary incident where I thought I'd be eliminated immediately, which would have been just embarrassing and just bummer. And
Yeah.
but then it got better. This race, Gavin, they didn't have well, it was um, there wasn't like a maximum number of days. It was 2 days after the first guy makes it. Alex Hofer took 14 days to make it. It was only 850 kilometers, so it just tells you how the speed has changed, right? So 850 kilometers.
Crazy.
Alex Hofer makes it in 14 days. So on day 15, he's finishing, which is giving everybody 16 days to keep to on day 17 is when it's done. So
Yep.
this was the longest one I've been in. I mean, more than half a month. And
Yeah, that's
so it
crazy.
allowed for a tremendous amount of time to sort of claw my way back through through the pack. I mean, I was, and Nate had a super good start. I remember just passing through places like near the Marmolada. It was like, man, Nate was here 48 hours ago. there's like no way I'm ever going to catch Nate. And then by day 14 or 15, I managed to catch up to him, and we hiked in the evening, and then Lisa made us some breakfast burritos in the morning, and we hiked, through about noon the next day, and unfortunately, his feet were really in bad shape.
Man, his stories of his feet. He took his
And
shoes
cut
and
him up.
just cut the sides of them open
Yeah.
so his feet could hang out of them. Oh, they sounded mangled
Yeah.
like mine in 2015.
Yeah. So he despite him having such a strong start, he was he by the end he was suffering pretty bad. So I had to leave him and keep pushing, and managed to almost catch up to Ehrlich Jessup. So I squeaked into the top 10. I got into ninth that year after all that. So it was,
Golly.
but it was it was a very, it didn't seem so super crazy paced. I mean, there was the, we'd march long into the night. We'd kind of, the habit was you go to about 1 a.m. till you're just super tired, and then wake up with the sun at 6-ish. So you kind of doing these 5-hour nights. But it somehow it was a little, it was kind of, at least waking up with the sun was really really good that year. And we really had no idea what we were doing. I mean, we came in there blind. I came in there with a map that was like 1 to 500,000. It was a road map. I'd Google Earth flown over the place a bunch of times. I was like, wow, there's a lot of mountains from here to there. And I tried to print a few print screens of like what I saw on the Google Maps on the route, but I was really like, I'm just gonna have to kind of take this day by day and see what happens.
And I mean, in the air, you weren't flying with a phone that had the next waypoints and all the stuff like we do now. Were you just often, I don't know where I am. I'll
We
just fly that way.
we had waypoints on some big, I think it was one of those fly techs. They gave us something that we had to carry, a big brick, and that
Oh,
gave us the
okay.
waypoints. We had our phone, but basically,
But those are the main waypoints. Those are just the,
oh yeah, we had no
right?
waypoints for the day or anything like that. I mean, it was a
Right.
whole different approach. I mean, and to me, it seemed a much more organic approach where once once I got off launch, uh, there was my game. There was like no communication with the supporter. Like the flying part of it was totally my game. The only thing, once I remember calling Dave on it was a really good day approaching the Swiss border, and I called him from the air because I just really needed to check if there was like a ceiling over us, because it was just such a good day. We're getting to like 3,800, and I just needed to know, is there a ceiling? Like, am I going to get some kind of violation, even though it didn't look like an area where they told us about airspace, but I just wanted to ask. So that was the only time that we communicated in the air.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And I mean, for navigation on the ground, is it literally just the 1 to 500,000 map you had? You didn't have, were you using any kind of GPS
We
or,
had an E-Trex, like an
oh,
E-Trex
Garmin?
GPS. We had some maps that we kind of gathered along the way. I mean, we had a little bit of a budget, so like Dave would kind of sprint ahead and just buy the local topo maps. And but it was we're just kind of make and do as best as we could. Luckily, the Sion area, since there's the Eiger turn point that the way I approached Martigny and all that was from north of that whole valley that's got the Sion airspace. So I
Mm-hmm.
didn't have to I didn't have to really deal um, with that. I just kind of came in from this diagonal. If you kind of took a diagonal from the Eiger towards Martigny, I approached that and just
Okay.
landed up. It was in the evening. It wasn't super crazy. I've had some much crazier landings like past Martigny. This was upwind of Martigny, and it was of course windy, but it wasn't a crazy windy situation there that time.
Is there a moment or a day or something in the race that just still really stands out as a really special moment that, a kind of a high of the race?
I think of that particular race. Like I said, the first actually my first proper XC flight on day 3 that really saved it, because that that made or break would have if that hadn't succeeded, I might have been facing elimination, possibly. So it was and I launched and I started sinking out, of course, so it made it extra sketchy. I was like, oh man, I got, how it is, you get below, you got the grassy areas up top, you got the grassy areas in the bottom, but you got that middle tree layer, and there's not always landing areas there. So once you drop below that, you're kind of committed to the valley if you keep sinking. And it was just got into the tree area, but managed to thermal out and and save it. So that was I think that's still the crux. Yeah, the what really stands out. I mean, a lot of days hiking
awesome.
through the rain, just hiking late into the night. But that, I think that stands out the most.
This is going off topic here a little bit, but I don't think this will hold true this year now because the numbers will shift. But the last time I did a check, maybe this was 2017 or maybe 2019, it was over half of the U.S. Participants in the X-Alps that had ever done it had kind of cut their teeth in Sun Valley.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
Really fascinating.
Yeah.
It's you and Nate to start off with, but Will Gadd, myself, Mitch, Willie, I'm missing some, but pretty remarkable. That's kind of an interesting thing.
Yeah, well, Sun Valley's been such a great training ground. I mean, I think I always said if you get comfortable with Sun Valley, you're ready for the Owens, and that's the Owens is only I think thing like that is one layer or one level higher. Obviously Midsummer Owens, but I think once you get comfortable with Sun Valley, a lot of stuff doesn't seem that crazy anymore.
That's true. Okay, so 2009, it was a really good one for you. 3rd place. Take us back to 2009.
Yeah, so 2009. So I still had Dave Henning as a supporter. We knew a little bit better what we're getting into. I think we had more than 2 pairs of shoes this time. We had some, let's see, with let's start with the worst on that one. The worst. So we got off to a good start. I think by the time we got to the Marmolada area, I would say I was almost maybe 5th, 4th, 5th. It was really looking good. And then before getting to Bolzano, I know what, actually, it was a 2-part deal. It was the first day was not very good. And we all flew just a little bit off the Geisberg, side hill landed, and then all ran downhill because everybody's excited. Toma's running, and we're all okay. We're going to run with Toma for a while, and I just did not. That was not good for my knees because I hadn't trained to do a lot of running with that backpack. So I damaged my knees a bit, and they were really that damage was starting to kick in by about day 4. And even though I was doing pretty well around 4th, approaching Bolzano, it was too windy to fly down into there. And so it was about I don't know, 4,000 foot or 1,200 meter hike down into Bolzano, and I hiked it all backwards because my knees were hurting, but they didn't they didn't hurt hiking backwards. So 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 that was like a remedy there. But what I didn't realize I was doing with that move is I was totally screwing up my Achilles heel. So then I got my Achilles heel that starts getting all swelled up, and basically tendonitis of the Achilles. And there I had to slow down a bit, and suddenly I'm back to like 10th, and it was only thanks to some really good flights after that I was able to kind of stay back in the game. The knees got better on their own. The Achilles tendon kind of kept bugging. The race doctor would like put shots of some homeopathic injections in there. They didn't, maybe helped a little bit, but yeah, it was thanks to the flying. I think that it helped helped me stay up front. And then it was a year a lot of people had airspace violations. I think Helmut from Austria had got eliminated. Toma might have gotten eliminated. I think that was a year they were being very, very strict. I think it was all or nothing. I think there wasn't a penalty; it was just elimination. And so I would say at least 2 or 3, or maybe more, got eliminated. And then Martin Miller from Switzerland, who would have won in 07 had he not had a violation. But back in 07, they gave a 48-hour penalty. So he had he hit the Sion airspace, and that let Alex Hofer get first and Thomas second in 07. Martin Miller was doing well, but then he flew into some box canyon and broke his ankle. And so he was out. And I know if he'd stayed in there, I'm like 99% certain he would have passed me at some point, because sometimes he'd have a little bit of a rough start, but then the second half he would often just jet through the standings and all the way up top. So he's
come back.
So he's real good, but he got hurt. And then towards the end, maybe day 8 or 9, it was suddenly appearing that it was this race for third between Aidan Toast from England and myself. And Aidan was a runner, not quite of the caliber of Toma, but he was definitely a runner. He could run. And so we had this back and forth over a few days where he would always outrun me, and then I would outfly him, and then he would outrun me. And we had this long one where we both ended up, we tagged the Matterhorn the same morning. We both kind of more or less flew out in towards Wisp that afternoon. And then we had 80 kilometers up the valley towards Martigny, and he just started running. And I was like, oh, man. And I just walked, and I walked all night, and I walked into Martigny the next morning and up to the Col de Forclaz that's above Martigny. And luckily it was too windy, because I was just not, having pulled that all-nighter, I was not feeling in any flying shape at all. And I think Aidan gotten himself a little bit further towards Chamonix, but he was having a hard time with the wind and wasn't able to fly. But somehow in the meantime, that day that we were both not able to fly, Evgeny from Russia managed to kind of hop over from Zermatt area, like towards Verbier, and just stay deeper in there, and was able to make his way. And suddenly we were all more or less in the Chamonix area. And the evening 2 days prior to the last day, because this was, Maurer had made it. So we had there was the 48 hours had already
The
kicked
48
in,
hours.
and we're all within about 5 kilometers of each other. And then the next morning, we each start making our own moves, and I remember hiking and basically hiking up to Cloud Base. And it was just too early, so taking a little nap, which is always a good thing in the X Alps. If you're on launch early and you can manage to take a nap, which by the end, like the final days, like days 9, 10, 11, it doesn't take much to any stopping of movement basically has you
You're
napping.
out.
Like it doesn't take it's not an effort to take a nap,
Right.
it's an effort to stay awake. So
Right.
taking a little power nap before the flight really helped, just to kind of get my head straight. And then it was a combination of, I think, almost 9 hopper flights for the most part.
Wow.
And I remember at one point seeing Evgeny fly by, but continuing down into a very stable valley. So I side hilled, and just with a bunched up glider hiked up maybe not even 100 meters and waited. It was, cloud base wasn't much uh, above us, and had to wait, basically time thermal cycles and go a little ways along the ridge, and got through a little coal and side hilled again, and basically then had to pull out my map. And this was still looking at an old Etrex Garmin and a big paper map, trying to make sense of where I am, what my next move is. And luckily, I knew this area a little bit, because it wasn't, we're basically now between, we've rounded we've rounded Mont Blanc, and we're all in the same game of just go as straight a course line towards Monaco, because nobody's going to make Monaco. It's impossible. So you're just trying to go straight down the course line and get as much distance, and managed to at the right time basically fly into the air near Bourg Saint Maurice, and cloud base at that point had risen close to 1,000 meters. So it was like top of lift was now 2,700 meters or so, and was able to fly all the way up to Col des Arines. And actually, I think, yeah, I had to land up there, walk a little bit, and then was able to sort of launch on a shoulder and fly, oh, southward into the next valley, and find just keep hiking. And then I was doing my math, because I knew Aiden could run, and but he kind of missed the window there a little bit, and didn't get into that great like end of the day flight and up the whole valley from Bourg Saint Maurice to Col des Arines, and that was the crux move. So I walked. I remember walking until 3 a.m. that night, because there's no rest rules, and I knew the guy could run, and I knew we still had till at least 11:30 the next day. So I didn't want him catching up, because I managed to.
And did you know exactly where he was? Was live tracking, something you could pull up on your phone, or Dave could?
Dave
You
could.
guys,
Dave could, and I think
okay.
I was getting enough information from Dave and via phone to know that he was about 25K as the crow flies behind us. But
Oh, you got a
I was doing.
good clip on him.
I knew I couldn't start running forever, but I knew he could. So I was, and then I heard he was like going up into the mountains to try to take some shortcuts. So even though I'd gotten a bit of a head start, I wasn't taking it for granted, and I just kept going and going, and ended up taking like a little 1.5 hour nap, and then flew down. I think now is technically in Italy, and then there was in the morning there was about 1,500 meters to hike back up and over another pass, and got to that pass with a few minutes to spare. Managed to launch and was basically airborne when the time ran out, but that
Oh,
managed to put me into third. And the honor of standing next to Hofer and Maurer was that was
special.
Maurer's first win. Hofer, Hofer barely made it in within the 48 hours, which was, it just showed him like that definitely, Maurer was coming onto the scene that year, '09, and
God, his first one too. I
his
mean,
first
what
one,
a
he just blasted through it. I mean, just really,
dominated.
yeah. So that
Amazing.
was, I remember being super super tired as they're doing the countdown on the for the podium finish. But yeah, it was unexpected in my mind. I'd never, Dave kind of said, "Yeah, we're going for podium this year." I was like, "Yeah, sure, dude." I wasn't feeling it. So it was a combination of some good lucky flights and other people's misfortunes, and it's something that just it was a fluke, but it was it was an awesome feeling to stand with those two guys. I mean, looking back at it now, that they're short of Casper Henry, they're the only two guys that have ever won the X-Alps.
Right.
So to stand with those guys on the podium was a treat. That definitely was a treat.
I'd forgotten that Hofer got second in that one. That's right. And then didn't he after when he was training for the was it 2011 when he broke his
Yep,
back and
yeah.
that was it?
2011 is when all those those really the rods, those the black sheep technology and all that,
Yep.
those carbon fiber rods came on the scene, and it was still, I think at that point it was still, I think it was still open class. I don't think they made every glider be certified, but it was um yeah, what was that? I'm trying to think if that was that might have been, oh no, I
I
know,
think
and
he
I think it was 11 that all that was coming on the scene. A lot of people are getting on those at that time.
right. Right. Yeah, I want to say he was flying the R10 maybe or the foggy memory,
Yeah,
but
yeah, but I know a lot of people were getting hurt. That was kind of like, I remember just
yeah.
is just a lot of people were getting hurt on those. But that came on the scene, I think, more in 2011.
Okay, so good transition. 2011, that was the first year we saw Guschelbauer, who's also had a pretty epic run
Yeah,
in the
he got
X-Alps.
himself into, yeah, on his first one there, into third place. I remember that.
I think that's what put him on Team Red Bull.
Yep.
And yeah, and the weather was pretty brutal in 11, right? Wasn't that the bad weather year?
Yeah, I'm trying to let's see. I remember that was the first time we had the Tri-Chime turn
Oh
point.
yeah.
And so yeah, like worst for that year. Once again, got off to a decent start, and then this time I think I got myself either hypothermic or something. But hiking up to the Tri-Chime, I got super cold, but I didn't. I had still a sweaty shirt. It was windy and cold, but I wasn't fully acknowledging what was happening. So I thought I would just, often I would just, no big deal. I got a wet shirt. I'll just keep hiking and it'll evaporate and everything will be fine. I remember taking a phone call. That was stupid. Taking a phone call from the States and sitting there in that wet shirt. And towards the end, not like getting cold and not even thinking rationally, I could have easily pulled out a wingtip of my paraglider and wrapped it around myself. And I wasn't thinking straight. I remember at the base of the hill, Dave's all, "You want your jacket?" It was a 250-gram down jacket, super lightweight down jacket. Would have made all the difference. I was like, "No, no, don't need it. I want to go super light." But yeah, I got up there and I was like, "Okay, well, I'll get up here and have some warm soup." I had like a little sip of that soup, and I could tell I was going to throw up. And then, and this was kind of embarrassing because I had a big plastic bag, but it was in a. It's one of the few times I slept in a hut. It was on top, but the dry chime hut, and there was like 20 people in this bunk room. And I remember getting in there around midnight and then just throwing up, and it was just it was not just embarrassing, but it was also, I woke up the next morning just feeling just absolutely terrible. And yeah, Dave said basically I bonked. I just kind of overdone it and just kind of,
Just cook
yeah,
yourself.
yeah. The next morning uh, we got going kind of slowly. It was like I'd made it up there, I think fourth or fifth, but by next morning before it got flyable, another 5 or 6 pilots got there. So that whole, like, any big lead advantage had quickly evaporated. Then it was just about like flying, out of the Dolomites and working my way towards Murano. And by let's see, it was the day after that we got to Murano, and I just remember like getting to Murano, landing in this really nice, like, overgrown old garden of berries and fruit, which was really nice. But also finding out that by now Maurer's already in Zermatt, which is just, you look at the map and you're like, holy shit, he's just so far ahead. And that they still hadn't implemented a minimum time rule, so we're like, wow, this race is going to be over, and we won't even get to play very long, because that year only Maurer and Toma, I think, made it.
That's right.
So, but what I do remember on that one, just to back up a little bit, let's see, what is this? No, that would have been 13. Okay, so that would have been 13. Yeah, it's funny, Gavin. Some of it gets to be a bit of a blur. You try to do.
Yeah, it all mashes together,
Yeah,
doesn't it?
yeah. I mean, I used to tell you the truth, I think up to the first 3, I was able to, like, in my mind, replay it day by day. I'd have to carefully think through it, but that's sometimes an exercise I did if I couldn't fall asleep. I was like, let's replay the X-Alps, and I would replay them, and I had up to 3 of them. I was able to replay them kind of day by day, but now you try to, like, think back on each individual one and what exactly happened in each one. It gets to be it gets to be a little hard to tease it apart.
Yeah, totally. They kind of glom together, and you get days from. Oh, that was in 2017. Oh, wait, no, that was 2019. I have that all the time.
Yeah.
I do the same thing to go to sleep sometimes and relive it, but you relive it wrong.
Yeah. What I need to do is, there's a fellow, I forget his name. He was in the '09, I believe, X-Alps, a British guy, and he kept meticulous records of the track logs. Tom Payne.
Tom Payne.
Yeah.
Tom Payne.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I need to send him an email one day and get the track logs of my of my
He,
five X-Alps, and I'd love to superimpose it all in one map, just have different colors. That'd be
yeah.
really great. And if you
He
go ahead.
he gave that to us. He didn't have all of them, but he had back to 2009 when I was getting ready for the first one, my first one in 2015. We got all those from him. I wonder if I still have them somewhere, but we used those as kind of training, just because, just to see how you all did it. How do they do this race? Because I was a rookie and I was clueless. Remember how much I called you?
Yeah.
How do we do that? How many shoes should I have? All those kind of things. And so, yeah, he still does. He keeps meticulous notes on all that stuff. He was very resourceful.
And what was actually, I was going to say, back in '07, even though it was very old technology, I think it was 2-minute tracking intervals, it made for much more realistic flight distances, because after that, when they got to much higher resolution tracking, they never, it always thought they could have found a programmer that would put like a low pass filter and actually take out your circles and take out, if you did it
Yeah,
every 2 minutes, you'd get a much more realistic distance flown. If you count every circle and every thermal, it always said, well, this guy flew 400 kilometers today, or something
I
crazy.
know, and I've often wondered if the audience understands that, because it's and they'll actually put it out, in the posts. Chrigel flew 280K today, and you're going, wait, no,
No,
he
yeah.
didn't. I mean, not even Chrigel did that.
Yeah, so I think it might be they're pushing big numbers to make it sound interesting, and I guess the majority of the audience are non-pilots that are not critically looking at this, but it it screwed everything up. Like when you're looking at the proportions of like actual distance flown to distance
Yeah.
hiked, because distance
Yep.
hiked, that's real distance hiked. Even at like whatever 1 minute intervals, 2 minute intervals, you're not moving that far. But when you start counting every circle, it totally skewed it. But so that in some ways, the old technology of every 2 minutes made it much more realistic for
Right. I
distances
never thought about
for
that. Yeah,
distances
that's really
flown.
interesting.
But still, kind of reminiscing a little bit on 2011. By then, being the third time going through some of these places, it does start to be a trip down memory lane. And what's really cool is you go over certain places and you're like, you know, man, last time I flew through this within minutes, and now I'm trekking through it, over hours, and vice versa.
Right.
So it's just it's definitely, but it's cool because like the places are kind of like your old friends as you pass through them.
Yeah. And you see them in new ways. Yeah, like Nate always says, it's a special way to see it because you would never see it in that way recreationally. You
Absolutely.
get to places in the race and fly in conditions, not necessarily even bad conditions, but just, those morning glory flights where you'd never normally even be out of bed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just crazy 10-minute sledders that are just, you're the only person in the world seeing that right then. It's just, those moments are incredibly special.
Yeah, and then I think, and anything to save a hike too. The side hill landings,
Anything.
the craziest places to side hill it, even on an active like little asphalt road that's on a basically a cut in a cliff. But it's you either land there, you look for traffic, and you land and you bunch up your glider real quick, or you're going to be landing way down there at the bottom and have 200 meters of extra hiking. And it's just you do anything to save not having to sink out or not landing lower than you need to.
And the number of times that I have carried on with the flight with no options because it's going to work out. You get into this headspace where there will be a landing. We're in the Alps,
Right.
There's going to be, I've flown down these river canyons that are just proper, V canyons with, basically flying down a river with surrounded by trees going, yeah, it's going to work out. Just flying past a beautiful LZ that, I could have definitely landed in, but nah, if I keep flying, I'll get another kilometer out of this.
Yeah. Yeah. Or some of the,
Crazy.
I mean, it's hard to remember exactly which one it was in 09 or not, but there was one memory that really comes to mind. It must have been, I would say maybe 09, but I remember there was the airspace of Sion. This time I'm coming. No, it would have been 11. I think it would have been 11 because 09 we hiked all that with Aiden, but 11 it was basically threading a needle. You have a 45-degree cliff face. You've got cloud base above it, and then you've got off to the side is airspace. So you got like a very physical thing, the cliffside, this kind of ephemeral but thing you don't go into next to a cliff, the cloud base above you, and then this invisible thing, this human-made airspace wall, and it was basically threading a needle through that. Like, because if you start sinking out too much, you're either forced on a very steep cliffside landing, or you're going to sink down into the airspace anyway, because it's like a triangle. And then if you go too high, you're in cloud. And threading the needle through that's one memory that always sticks with me. That was just like you kind of you get through that and you're like, yes. And
well, nice way to nail the 2011 highlight. 20 and let me know if we should move on. If you want to share more from
2013
yeah, because
was new crew. I had Jesse Williams and Louis Rosinger, and it was let's go to the worst day, because I always like to start with the worst day. Worst day. So back in 2011 was the last time I made 10th. Last time I was in the top 10. So that ended 2011. And 2013, a lot of things changed. Now they're saying, okay, Maurer is moving so fast, we're going to put in a minimum everybody gets to race for 12 days rule, which was cool.
Mm-hmm.
So we all knew that we'd actually get to fly for maybe more than 9 or 10 or however many days it was. But it just seemed like...
You sure that was 2013?
I believe 2013. Yeah.
I thought they'd instituted that in 2015.
No.
He finished that in 2013. He finished in 6 days or something. It was crazy.
Yeah, and that's, I remember we race
Keep
for
going.
12. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. They
Okay.
that was instituted in 2013, because I remember 2013, like in 2015, marking some of the same spots as 2013. And what made the big difference for me was, it 2013 the weather got bad at the end, but it was day 11, and I'll tell you the story, man. We start super early. We had the Saint Hilaire was a turn point, like where the Saint Hilaire that festival is.
Mm-hmm.
And so it had to, in the morning, usually, the program was I'd start hiking a little bit, then they'd get some breakfast ready, catch up to me. I'd probably shed some clothes as I'm getting ready for the uphill hike. And so then I do this, we go through that whole routine. I hike up to the Saint Hilaire launch, and I realize that we don't have the bag of clothes. Like, we kept most of the clothes in this big blue IKEA bag, and there's two nice down jackets in there, all the speed sleeves, all the X-Alps stuff,
Everything you need.
everything. And we left it by the side of the road at, like, 5:30 a.m. or something.
Oh,
And about 2 hours ago. And
oh,
it was, yeah, they went back, they drove back, it was gone. I remember trying to get them to, like, plaster some posters or something, some like lost clothes flyers. I remember on my blog I was, trying to remember my French. I was like, j'ai perdu mes vêtements, si quelqu'un a vu mes vêtements, est-ce qu'il peut me téléphoner? Like, I was like, please let me know. I was like, really, like, just missing my clothes. And it was, even though I had the flight off Saint Hilaire was just a long morning sledder, but it ended really cool because it was just clearing a bar, and there's not many barbed wire fences. It's mostly like electric fences or nothing. But there's a barbed wire fence. I cleared it by like a half a foot on the other side that let me get into a field and save myself from hiking up from the very bottom valley. But that was,
mm,
you know, that was little consolidation of the fact that the forecast was that it was going to be bad, stormy for the next couple of days. And, you know, try as we may, we got to, I think definitely got the closest I ever got. I think we got to within 90 kilometers, but, um, you know, it was the first, it was the first time I hadn't made top 10, and I was 11th, and all top 10 made it to Monaco with this 12-day
oh,
rule. So I was like, it felt like it slipped through my fingers, just like,
oh,
we were given a finite number of days. It was no longer dependent on the fastest guy, because, being within 48 hours behind Maurer just seemed to make Monaco completely impossible until they implemented this 12-day rule. And then to kind of felt like then you start to question every move along the way. Where did you screw up? Like, and it's
yeah.
it's it's one of those, yeah, you just evaluating it. But you know the the best, I don't know, it was fun. It was, at least, as even though this was approaching the day approaching, trying to get to Saint Hilaire, but on the RV's chain by La Cluse, the col by La Cluse there, got to pass a French guy in France. So that was, one of the pilots. So I made it from 12th to 11th. It was a small consolidation, but at least,
Right.
I remember Chuck emailed me, or sent, whatever, on the chat. He's like, "Hey, you just passed a French guy in France." So, so that was, at least a little something.
Yes.
And
A little consolation.
yeah, and then I remember in that specific one, some the day approaching the let's see which would we had Interlaken. So we had Interlaken, so we
Yeah.
went by the Eiger. So approaching, like, getting into Interlaken, flying into there, and there's just this big cunim over the Eiger. So, kind of skirting well away from it, but it was just like, just amazing lift in that whole area, the whole valley. And then trying to get as close to Interlaken, and doing these into wind in the lee uphill landings, and I was starting to get really cocky with those. Just I was like, well, you got to land it. Not gonna land at the base. Not gonna hike from the bottom, and
Right.
I'm not gonna make it over the crest. I'm not gonna punch upwind, but I'll land into wind. Just basically like you just basically fly it right into the hillside because it's flushing down the hillside, and just kind of carry enough momentum and flare hard enough and land into that. And that was that on that one. It worked out pretty good. So it wasn't until 2013 where I think that no 2015 where uh, where I started to I think I overdid it with that. And 2015. So as we move to that, so I'm still got Jesse, and then Pavel Cibulka from the Czech Republic was my other supporter, and they just keep adding more. Yeah, I mean, you probably noticed they just keep adding more and more turn points. I mean, there's probably a finite
Yeah.
limit once you get like to 10 or 12. But
Yeah.
if you go on the Wikipedia page and you look at like what was in 2003, I think they had to go north of Verbier and then to Monaco.
Yeah, exactly. They had two.
It made it so clear cut. You know,
Yeah, I think in 20, I can't remember, it's either 2017 or 2019, there were 13 turn points.
yeah,
It was just, wait, what?
yeah. I mean,
This is crazy.
it's crazy how it's evolved. I know. Before, I think it was the 15 where a bunch of people like violated interlocking airspace, and at that point, Red Bull wasn't really caring about it too much. But then I think the Red Bull got a big talking to where they basically had to like, if you guys better enforce airspace, and
Yeah.
that's when things got really strict. In 07, then even more strict in 09. And that's one of those things I think is also a fluke. I mean, I tried my best and managed to avoid ever getting an airspace violation, and I'm very happy about that, because I saw the people who got hit by that, and especially the years where it was just all or nothing invalidation. I mean, elimination. It just,
Oh, brutal.
yeah. I mean, I just, I could see that, their world was momentarily just crumbling, because you're just putting all this effort into that, and just to be told, oh, you
Yeah.
nicked this invisible wall, and now you're cut, you're
Right.
gone. That.
Right.
So as there's a few times I got really worried that I might have maybe nicked something that I didn't quite notice. Even like the first day over the Geisberg on one of the X-Alps. I remember it was like I might have drifted. Did I drift too far towards Salzburg? Oh no! Like I was like, I just
Yeah,
wasn't
yeah,
quite
yeah.
sure.
Oh, the stress of the airspace.
Yeah,
Ugh. Yeah, it always dings people too. And that was one of the things that I kind of held on to in the last race because I had such a terrible start and I was really fighting at the back. And but it was interesting. It was in some ways I wouldn't say fun, but it was kind of interesting being there because I'd never had a start like that. And it was like you said in your 2007 race when you started really sick, it was just a different kind of way to be optimistic, because that people ahead of you are going to make mistakes. People are going to get hurt. People are going to hit airspace. You just got to hang in there,
yeah,
and it's going to work out. You're not going to win, but
yeah.
but that was true. That did happen. But yeah, so 2015. This was my
2015.
first. This was your
This is
last.
my last
You
one.
made it to Monaco, but we had a really cool day together, day 8 or something after the turn point down in the Brenta.
Yeah,
But
yeah. That was the what was that? They called it the Cimatosa or the
yeah,
yeah.
something like that.
Yeah, so that one, I remember. Yeah, that was in many ways. I was trying to think of what would consider worse, because that was in many ways for me a great X Alps, even though like position wise it was my worst ranking, 15th. But it was, yeah, with such relatively good weather and the 12-day minimum, it allowed so many people. I don't think before or since have that many people made it to Monaco.
Hmm.
And but at that Cimatosa, at that Italian turn point, I remember, you know, we had to land, sign the board, and then relaunch. I remember relaunching and very quickly side hilling it, because or within a few minutes, because I just wasn't. I was seeing so much cloud cover I just wasn't trusting it to fly out of there. And I figured I'll side hill it, either wait for more sun or hike a little higher. Yet everybody that was like coming in, signing their name, flying away, they were making it work. Yeah, and I remember, Jesse was like, "Why aren't you flying, man?" And I was just like hiking this long traverse, looking for a good relaunch spot, and then the day was getting, it was getting late in the afternoon. So by the time I relaunched, it was more of an extended sled ride. And then it was the morning after that where we met up, and didn't who was it? Dave
Dave.
Turner. It wasn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, didn't I mean? Didn't he fly with? Didn't we all show up on the same launch and just the two of us?
Yeah, same launch. You and I literally launched in the same place. That was one of the spicier launches I remember, actually, not because of the conditions, but you just hucked yourself off the cliff. I thought, okay, well, he's doing it. I can do that. And for you, but you had a great flight. Dave and I both bombed. Remember, it was wicked stable,
Yeah, because he wanted to
and
go
that was
around.
the
He wanted to go around this one corner. That didn't make sense. And I just got on this one spot, and I remember just staying and gaining like a foot, losing a foot, just forever hugging this little spot until I was able to climb out. And this is still even before the crest. This is before like getting
yeah.
to Sunward, or was it Sunward?
That was an exciting day. That was Tom de Dorlado was airlifted to the hospital. The German guy bowed out of the race because remember it had been windy. We were fighting a lot of wind that year, and that was the day Toma got really hurt. And then I think that was the day, or one maybe the day before, when Michael Vici landed in the lake, threw his reserve and landed in the lake, and almost died trying to swim to shore.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, some crazy ones in that race went down. You and I were oblivious, of course. We were doing our own thing, but
Yeah, and then
uh,
then after that, I remember there was maybe one other stable day after that, and then you more or less caught up, and then that's when you did your deep line, where I kind of
yeah,
I carved way to the north and then flew. I had like an 8 hour flight, and that was the day. I think we've talked about this on another one
yeah,
where I got into the wave for a bit, and but you managed to cut through over by Zermatt. And when I was there this summer, I was looking at that and I was like, wow, like how did in all this wind? I know you said it was very spicy, where you had to deal with had to stall it a few times, but just you managed to push through there. Nick from New Zealand managed to push through there, but when I flew up into tag the Matterhorn turn point, but I just wasn't seeing how. I just wasn't seeing the move to continue pushing into wind. It seemed like one would just.
yeah. They getting out of there was, man. I tried so many times. I hit the turn point and I just kept pushing up into those glaciers and just getting spanked and running back down and trying again and trying again. And then Powell, the Polish guy, we both finally hooked a thermal, and he was behind me, but in the same thermal. And we finally got high enough, somewhere around 38 or something, to keep going. And you know what was the big factor there was communication. When I got into the SAS and then into the Zermatt and heading up there, suddenly I was with all these X-Alps pilots, and it was just, it wasn't a recreational day. There was nobody else flying that
Yeah.
day, but there was X-Alps pilots. And I'm looking at them thinking, whoa, I think that's so, I don't remember now, but I think that's so-and-so. They were in eighth this morning. I was in 18th. So I was very excited. I knew that we were doing well. And then I started getting these texts from Bruce that just said, do not come back to the Rhone. Because everybody was going in and tagging it and going back to the Rhone and getting drilled because the wind was so strong, and just landing.
Oh yeah, I remember landing just before, like not quite out to the Rhone, but like almost at Wisp level, but just still in that valley where the upside down Y
Yep.
starts, or the Wishbone.
Yeah.
So that was very funky in there. But it kind of seemed like the only move, even though I knew I'd have the next day was forecast to be even more windy, and I knew
Yep.
I'd have the endless walk up that valley, those 80 kilometers, and
Oh, the
so
death
so
walk up the Sion Valley.
yeah, but it was. I remember like once again like uh, Jesse was questioning, why didn't you those other guys made it that way, like I just wasn't seeing it, and we didn't have we weren't doing the communication thing. Like we didn't have a radio or necessarily calling each other or anything in the air. So yeah, it's hard to say. It's hard to say. I mean, it felt like for me, it felt like the smart move just to fly back out. But may, obviously, several people were able to push right up through there.
Yeah, I mean, it was, and looking back and hearing the stories, I ended up confirming this with Powell a couple years ago down in Colombia, because in one of the stalls, just every ridge that you were heading west, towards Chamonix and Verbier, the wind was really strong, and you were high. It was fine. You're just pushing against wind. But when you get down below these ridges and have to lee out of it, you take some spanking. And one of them in particular, I guess I scared Paul out of the Powell out of the air.
Oh, wow.
he saw me just completely lose my glider, and he went, "Okay, I've had enough,"
Yeah.
and went and landed. And I didn't realize this, but Michael Vici was right below us, and he had also landed. Just, okay, this is too much. And I think Ferdy and Nick were the other two that were able to push through. But yeah, I mean, and at the end, after all the fighting, flying into Verbier was class 1. There was, the wind finally died. And I mean, flying into Verbier, I was texting Mike and Stu and waving at town. And I mean, it was just a piece of cake. It was, but
That
it
still
took a
blows my
while.
mind that you're able to kind of push upwind through. Because now that I've seen that terrain a couple times, it just to imagine pushing up through it. Like when I was north of Wisp and like making my way kind of along the north part, it made sense because I would never have to quite go into the lee, and it almost felt like a little protected. There's the valley wind that was strong in the valley. Then there was this mid layer that was reasonable that you could kind of work your way and keep pushing up through. And then above crest level, it was strong again. But it seemed like going from Zermatt towards to Verbier, like those initial crossings, you're there. It's not like you're flying along the side of a range. You're going across, like each one is a
Yeah.
perpendicular. Like you're gonna have to push into wind into its lee to get over it. And like
It's interesting to think about these things too. I mean, in retrospect as well, wondering, I I I really don't think I could do that move again. It's funny how the race puts you in different headspaces. I mean, part of it was that my feet were falling off. So the night before in Bellinzona, I landed in all this wind. That was when Tom got hurt. And when I landed, Bruce was just super fired up. Honza's right there. You can, you're only 20K behind about 6 people. You could go get him. And I said, I can't walk, Bruce. And I'm flying like crap. I need sleep. I need a beer, and I need to go to bed. I mean, it was 6 p.m. There was a lot of day left. But I already had the idea of the next day of just going direct, but it was kind of this all or nothing. It was day 8. I'd had a series of bad days after a really good start. And I think it was just, I have to do something big here. I have to, to make Monaco, I've got to do something. And so I think it was just this, headspace that was available to me that day. And I wonder, maybe Kriegels has that headspace all days. I don't know, but I don't know that I'd be able to do it again. Certainly now, I don't think I would. I'd just be too scared.
yeah, yeah.
In some ways, it's just ignorance is
Yeah,
bliss.
yeah,
And
yeah. I was almost thinking about that too. Like because where you were in your flying career at the time, and then like some of the stuff you've written later, like what why sometimes when people are so deep, like why did you? I think there's some article or something you're telling some guy why are you so deep if it was working just fine out front? Totally
right.
different scenario, but like
Yeah.
it's not always but I also like to when possible go deep, like especially on the Sierras, if it's ever possible to fly from Waltz and fly directly over Whitney and the true crest of the high Sierras. That's
Mm.
there's something about getting deep in there and seeing it all, but in less wind preferably. That's
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Less wind for sure. Well, was the highlight from that year just simply Monaco, or was there something during the race that really stands out more?
I mean, I think yeah, I would have to say finally making the goal, even though once I uh, uh, got onto what do they call it? Is it Mongros, the one? Yeah,
Yeah.
it was it was somewhat anticlimactic because then there's just a lot of this waiting around. Like you're once you get there, you're you can't fly down to the raft right away. They kind of it's staged, and there's so many of us. There's like these little 15-minute windows. You get to go and your supporter flies with you, and then so we're kind of have to wait around for that. And I remember getting up there in the morning, and somebody handing me a beer and somebody handing me a Red Bull, and I remember I was like, okay, I guess I'll have one of each, But it was yeah, it was one of those things you kind of like it did put a finishing touch. It was I wanted to make it. I wanted to land on that raft. I'm glad they still had that raft because I heard in the future or in the some of the future editions they didn't even put the
Put it
raft
on the
in the
beach.
water anymore.
Right.
So that was cool. I mean, that was definitely something that was 8 years in the making for me, 5 attempts. So I would have to say that was super special to get to land there, even though it was the worst ranking and it was obviously one of the easiest years because so many people made it. More than half the field made it, so it wasn't. It was nowhere near as I guess unique or special as making podium, but it always
Mm.
for all those other 4 editions being not quite at goal and being told it's time's up, stop, get in the van, and now drive to Monaco and celebrate. It was super cool to arrive in Monaco.
To be there.
Yeah, the one thing I was going to mention on that 2015 is I think as I was saying in 2013 I was getting a little bit cocky about landing in the lee of things. Just like okay, it's flushing over this hill, and I want to go there, and I'm not gonna clear it, but I'm just gonna I'll land and just land in the lee like I was saying. Well, this time I did it, and it was really windy, and it really felt like a constant stall into the ground. I know it wasn't. I know it was still flying, but there's just so much sink, and it was probably kind of like 15 gusting to 18 miles an hour where
Hmm.
I landed, and it was in the lee. And luckily, it was mostly grassy and it was a really hard landing, but it was one of those I kind of checked myself and everything was fine. But I was thinking, man, you only get so many of these, You just this is not
Yeah.
the right thing to be doing. It's not worth it. It's just like it was one of those realizations. It's like, okay, you've been getting away with some of this and you just kept doing it in stronger and stronger conditions and just don't do that again.
At some point, it's
Yeah.
going to bite,
Yeah.
isn't it? Was that? I'm curious, Hanzo. Was there an overriding one thing after 2015 that was okay? I'm done. Was it because you made it? Was it because of kids, family,
Yeah, I think
age?
it was Tommy. The second kid was on the way. By Tommy was born in 17 in March, and I felt like I sort of checked off all the boxes. I mean, it's like
Hmm.
I knew it wasn't. I was obviously descending for the last four. I was descending through the rankings. So like the heyday was obviously early on being able to crawl up into ninth after such a bad start, then making podium, then still like one more of holding the top 10, and then just kind of slipping through the rankings. And I could see the pace of the race was getting so intense. The if that's a word, professionality, I don't know, but now they'd opened it up to more than one supporter. You had so many people like preparing year round, and I didn't have the time to invest in it. I mean, if you it, if I'd won the lottery and if I didn't have kids, I think I would do it again. Maybe even maybe even just the lottery. If you didn't have to work, then you could do a lot more flying, as you know. But yeah, I think it was a good time. It was a good time to stop. I mean,
Yeah.
you probably you just gone through the same thing recently yourself. Is there's a point where you decide it's you're not getting better. It's getting the race has only getting just crazier, faster, madder.
Yeah.
And you just kind of got to, I guess it's time to let somebody else have a go at it.
Yeah, totally. Honza, what a treat, man. That was really fun. I've been smiling the whole time. It was fun to relive those races with you. Thanks, man. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah. It was definitely fun I'm glad we got to race each other in 2015. I'm glad you got to represent for another 3 years, and yeah, we're gonna see how Logan and what's the other Cedar how they do. Yeah, I'm wishing them lots of luck. I know they're training hard. I got to see Logan shortly a few weeks ago in Carpinteria and had a really fun sky camp with him last May in the Owens. We just had stellar conditions, like minimal wind, but good, proper Maytime strong thermals. So, yeah, I think it's time to give the next generation a go at it.
Absolutely. Well, cool, bud. All the best, and can't wait to fly with you again sometime soon.
Yeah. No. Thanks for having me over again for this chat, and yeah, it's been great. It's always a fun walk down memory lane, looking back at all these X-Alps. And look forward to flying with you too, man.
If you find the Cloud-Based Mayhem valuable, you can support it in a lot of different ways. You can give us a rating on iTunes or Stitcher, or however you get your podcast. That goes a long ways and helps spread the word. You can blog about it on your own website or share it on social media. You can talk about it on the way up to launch with your pilot friends. I know a lot of interesting conversations have happened that way. And of course, you can support us financially. This show does take a lot of time, a lot of editing, a lot of storage and music and all kinds of behind the scenes cost. So if you can support us financially, all we've ever asked for is $1 a show. And you can do that through a one-time donation through PayPal, or you can set up a subscription service that charges you for each show that comes out. We put a new show out every 2 weeks. So, for example, if you did $1 a show and every 2 weeks, it'd be about $25 a year. So way cheaper than a magazine subscription, and it makes all of this possible. I do not want to fund this show with advertising or sponsors. We get asked about that pretty frequently, but for a whole bunch of different reasons, which I've said many times on the show, I don't want to do that. I don't like having that stuff at the front of the show. And I also want you to know that these are authentic conversations with real people, and these are just our opinions, but our opinions are not being skewed by sponsors or advertising dollars. I think that's a pretty toxic business model. So I hope you dig that. You can support us. If you go to cloudbasedmayhem.com, you can find the places to support. You can do it through patreon.com/cloudbasedmayhem. If you want a recurring subscription, you can also do that directly through the website. We've tried to make it really easy, and that will give you access to all the bonus material, little video casts that we do and extra little nuggets that we find in conversations that don't make it into the main show, but we feel like you should hear. We don't put any of that behind a paywall. If you can't afford to support us, then just let me know and I'll set you up with an account. Of course, that'll be lifetime, and hopefully you're being in a position someday to be able to support us. But you'll find all that on the website. All of you who have supported us or even joined our newsletter or bought Cloud-Based Mayhem merchandise, t-shirts or hats or anything, you should be all set up. You should have an account, and you should be able to access all that bonus material now. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate your support, and we'll see you on the next show. Thank you.